So today I want to talk about requirements. So in a very just a couple of slides, I will be talking you through requirements. But the topic of this session is to focus on requirements because at the end of the day, requirements are the um, basis on which everything is done. Without requirements, there's no project. Without requirements, there is no clients. Without requirements, there's no value proposition. Without requirements, there's no work to be done. Pretty much. Yeah. So, what is a requirement? Or what are requirements? A requirement basically is a service, a function, could be a feature that somebody needs. And that somebody could be your end user, that somebody could be your customer, that somebody could be your colleague internally, that somebody could be your boss, that somebody could be anybody, a stakeholder, anybody that has vested interest in any aspect of a project is a stakeholder, and whatever they need is considered a requirement. I've seen people make the mistake of only saying or relating requirements to when you are building a product or you are building an app or no, requirements is requirements. In simple terms, it could be a constraint, it could be a business rule. If, for example, you are working in HR or you're working in people services, as is the case in Joy Momentum, your requirements might be as simple as you want to be able to onboard interns to be able to work in Joy Momentum. That is a requirement. It doesn't mean that you have to go and build a software to do that, but you have to provide that service. You have to provide that function for that person. That becomes your requirement. You want to send certificates to people that have taken or attempted or completed internship programs. That is a requirement. That's something, anything that needs to be done, basically, for somebody at the end of the value chain is a requirement. Okay, that's my definition of it. Now, if we bring it and drill it down a little bit and try to, analyze it further, we are looking at requirements in two flavors. You can have requirements in the flavor of business requirements, and then you can also have requirements in the flavor of solution requirements. Okay, you can have business requirements, and then you can also have solution requirements. Now, let me spend 1 minute on that. Okay, 1 minute on that. Business requirement is the requirement that comes from the business user. So a business user will be somebody that is maybe not technical, but they have a need. For example, let's use Apple as a company. Apple is a business, right? And there's so many moving parts of Apple. They have operations, they have marketing, they have technical development, they have device manufacturing, they have software development, they have all sorts of design and everything, and many parts of one of the biggest organizations in the world, right? Now, the CEO of Apple, that's Tim Cook. Tim Cook is a business stakeholder. Tim Cook will say, for example, next year we want to release iOS 19. Okay, I don't know why I'm using this example because iOS 18 dealt with me. So I don't know why I'm using the example. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But you get it, Jay. So we want to release iOS 18 or 19 rather to our customer base of iPhone users. Now, that is a business requirement because that has to do with business. That is a company declaring that they want to do business with customers by giving their customers something the customers would like. All right. At a very high level, that is a business requirement. But then when you start to decompose and analyze that requirement that has come from the directive of the CEO or a strategy from the executive arm of the business, you will be considering, okay, are there things that we need to do in order to satisfy this business requirement from the CEO of Apple, which is we want to release iOS 19 to all our iPhone users or iOS users by December 2024. That is a business requirement. Within that business requirement, then you can start thinking, hang on, in order for us to do this, we need to do some design work. In order for us to be able to make changes, we need to identify what upgrades are we making in the iOS. We need to identify what patches do we need to make in the application. We need to identify how do we deploy this solution such that people can just click on a button and their iOS on their devices gets updated automatically. Now you are decomposing that business requirement, and you are now beginning to identify potential solution requirements in order to satisfy those business requirements. And what that inherently means is that in order for you to say the business requirement is done, those solution requirements need to be satisfied or implemented or executed. All right? So when we are looking at requirements, in order to put them in perspective, as an analyst or as a project person or whatever, once you get the gist of it, like somebody is requesting for something, or you need to do something for someone, you should be able to automatically by default tell that, okay, this thing that I am about to do, or this thing I am working on is a business requirement. And the solution requirement aspect of it, this is it, right? Now, there are scenarios whereby, for example, you are a developer. As a front-end developer, you are given a user story as a requirement to implement a functional change in the mobile app, right? That is a solution requirement. But as a developer, the responsibility is on you to ask questions and understand this solution requirement that I am about to implement. What is the business value? What is the end result of this solution requirement? If I implement this functionality that allows somebody to download this app automatically, is that in alignment with what the business wants, right? Unfortunately, in some scenarios, the kind of developers we see, not judgmental, by the way, developers will basically just say, give me this, just tell me what you want the solution to do. It doesn't really matter. We don't care what the business requirement is or what the business objective is. We just want to implement, just write the code, ship it, bang. And then whatever happens to the business, whether the solution aligns with the business objectives or business goal, they can't care less. So that's not the kind of developer, that's not the kind of solution provider that we want you to be, that all of us should be, which we aim to understand from the get-go. If you're given a requirement, or if you're given or told something that somebody needs, is it a business thing? Is it a technical thing? And then also, is it functional? Is it non-functional? Now, functional and non-functional under solution basically describes the what. When you talk functional, functional means if you go to an ATM machine, yeah, you slot in your card, there is a behavior that is expected, that you expect from that ATM machine to have. You put in your card, you expect the machine to say, you expect the machine, somebody says, I'm in the waiting room. Okay, what's going on? Everybody in the waiting room should be in by now. Apologies. People that join late, you see, this is what happens. They break the thoughts of the coach. Let me just say, please refresh. Can someone do me a favor, please? People are dialing in from Join Momentum Microsoft Teams. Let me see. Is anybody here from Join Momentum? Please just put in a comment in the Teams and tell them that we are not in Teams for this session. I've said that like a billion times. So people trying to join from Teams should please follow the link, register on the Accelerator portal, and join us here. Okay, let's crack on. So like I was saying, if you are looking at functional, so you go to the ATM machine, that was what I was talking about. And in the ATM machine, you put in your card, you expect a certain type of behavior from the machine. You expect the machine to ask you, please, are you looking to withdraw money or check your balance? And you have to choose an option. So the machine also then expects a behavior or a response from you. Then you press the button and say, I want to check my balance, or I want to withdraw some money. And then you wait. And as you wait, the machine also tells you, okay, before you go ahead, please enter in your PIN so that we can recognize and authorize or authenticate that you are the true or the real owner of this ATM card. Okay? Now, the back and forth between you and the system, the person that designed the ATM machine system would have designed the functionality, which is the what, the solution of that machine to have that functional behavior, that for every response or for every interaction that you have with that system, the system will give you back a corresponding response or feedback until you achieve the purpose for which you have come to visit the machine. That is what we refer to conceptually when we say functional solution requirements. Okay? Don't worry, we'll get into detail in a moment. Now, when we talk about non-functional solution requirements, imagine that we use let's use the same example, that you go to the ATM machine, you slot in your card, and then the machine just goes blank, or the machine keeps quiet for a long while. You're waiting. At some point, after 2-3 minutes, you start wondering, am I safe? Is my card lost? Or is this machine working? No, that is not supposed to be the case. You expect that once you put in the card, within a few seconds at the most, the machine to tell you what do you want to do, or to give you some sort of instruction or guidance on how to proceed from here. Now, non-functional requirements relate to how well the system does the functional things that the system is expected to do. And how well could be, for example, how quickly does the system respond, the speed, right? For example, it could be how securely does the system does it. Imagine that you say yes, and it doesn't ask you for your PIN, and it just basically takes you to say, how much do you want? You'll be worried, because that means if anybody takes your card, they can take your money. So things like speed, reliability, response time, security, and things like that is how well the system does it is what we refer to when we talk about non-functional requirements. Okay, now let's move on. As you can see here, so we can break, this is just more detail about what I've been describing in that diagram. We can break requirements down further into general business requirement, technical requirements, functional, non-functional. Basically, how well, to what level of performance, solution attributes like security, reliability, maintainability, availability, all the latest, basically, performance, response time. Those are things you capture as non-functional requirements. Okay. Now moving forward, when we talk about functional requirements, like I described, is what the requirements will do for the business. Non-functional talks about like performance and measures. Now, how do we capture requirements? This is what we're going to be doing a lot today. Okay, we use this template, which is called user stories. User stories is basically written in the format of, as a user role, I need a feature so that I can achieve a goal or something like that. It's a brief, and it is very brief, and it is intended to be so. Much of the detail, basically, you can evolve during your sprint or your time boxes and all that. You can even have higher level user stories like epics, and then you can further break them down. You see some examples, which will take some examples in a moment. So you can break down, you can have categories of stories. You can have stories that are like higher level and then further decomposed into smaller user stories, maybe for developers to be able to do them or execute them in smaller chunks of time and all that type of stuff. But user stories are not intended to be full specifications. The fine details may not necessarily have to be written down, but you can basically incorporate them into your solution as part of the work in a sprint. So let me give you an example. In a sprint, let's say we pick an epic story, which is an umbrella story, and then we further decompose that umbrella story into smaller 5 or 6 further stories. Right. Now, what we are talking about here is that within those smaller user stories, we should be able to now begin to think about what are the specifications that go into the implementation of each of them and add the detail to each of them, such as things like acceptance criteria, the design screens, the logic in the back end, and the API endpoints, all those things you can include within each of the stories. Okay, your requirements should actually clarify the reason why you are doing it. What is the business goal here? So you should be able to trace every story to the business requirement, to the business value. Does that make sense? So if you are working on a story and you can't really trace it to what exactly is this going to do for our customer or for our business or for our company, or what exactly is it going to do, then there's a problem if you can't trace it, because what this does is create some level of traceability and accountability for the team. Every developer, every designer, every member of your team, whatever you're working on, you should be able to trace it to the bigger picture. All right. Now, that I mentioned earlier that within a user story, remember we talked about the components of a user story as a persona, meaning a user role. Now, personas here refer to the role of the actor in our solution. Like, who are we building this for? Okay. You should be able to put that, it should be that specific in your user story. Who are we building this for? That person becomes the user role in that template of a user story, as a customer, as a paying customer, as a offboarding or what kind of customer? As a new customer or as a going customer, whatever. You should be able to be that specific in your user story. So these representations are people that are going to be using our product or whatever it is that you are developing or you're building. Usually personas are defined at the early stages of the project, but they continue to be refined. If you find yourself working on a project and you're not clear about the personas, you should be asking your team members questions. In the early stages of the project, one of the first things that you spend a lot of time doing is understanding the personas, meaning the end users, the customer personas, the ideal, your ideal, some people refer to it as the ideal client profile, right? Ideal ICP, ideal customer profile, different names they call it. But basically, what we are describing here is you need to identify each potential user of your solution, of your product, and you have to consider them as real people. And you need to include things like what they understand, things like what they like, what they don't like, you know. You don't have to be, when you are creating personas, I really don't always expect too much, because it's like a moving goalpost, the way I look at it. So it's the whole idea is so that in the mind of the product team, when you're doing stuff, when you're creating or you're building or you're creating or analyzing, you are wearing the heart of the potential user of your solution, and you should be wearing that hat from their perspective, because without that, it can be very easy to build the wrong thing in the right way, or build the right thing in the wrong way, or actually build the wrong thing the wrong way. Okay, so persona should seem very real to every member of the team. It's not only just for user researchers or business analysts, it's actually for every member of the team, design, development, Scrum Master, whatever it is you're doing. You should have an understanding of your product. If you don't have it, then you need to go back to your teams now and ask questions, and make sure that you can get some information or some documentation about the personas in the product, on the project that you're working on. If you don't have it, you can create one. It's never, ever too late. As a business analyst, these are the kind of artifacts that you need to be asking questions about, to say, where can I get this? Who has this? Who can give me this? Does this exist? If they don't exist, can I facilitate the conversations to make them happen? There are tons and tons of templates that you can use to basically make this happen. If you're a business analyst or a Scrum Master, a product owner, and you are not familiar with how to produce these things, then you should be asking questions and try to facilitate doing it together as a team. What you can do potentially is ask questions or formulate focus groups of real users, covering different personas, and test your idea with them as you develop. Now that we covered a full understanding of that user role in the story, now let's talk about the user story card. Now, this is a bit old school. Let me first of all say this. It's a bit old school because now we mostly work remotely. If you're not working fully remotely, like we do in John Momentum, you probably work hybrid. Maybe you work remotely partly, or you work in the office a couple of days, or you I don't think anybody is actually doing full in the office. I don't know, I may be wrong, but anyway, I said this is old school because in them days before remote became like mainstream, we used to have the cart. I remember many projects I've done actually. The one that comes to mind, for example, was one of the projects I did at the BBC. We used to have this white moving board, physical board. And in that board, I remember always drawing the Kanban board, manual Kanban board with whiteboard markers. And then we get I used to go to the stationery shop, buy inventory cards, just like it looks, playing cards like that. Inventory cards with what's it called? This sticky thing. What's that thing called? Blue tacks. And you write your user story on the card. And the back of the users, or on the back of the card, you write your acceptance criteria. And then you put a blue tack and stick it to the board under which part of the board, whether it's in backlog, whether it's in development or in analysis, on testing, and that's how we worked. And every day we huddled around the physical board. I'm talking 12 years ago now. But again, these things have evolved. Like I said at the beginning of the conversation, some of these things I'm really like trying to, you know, peel it back to the basics. Now we use Trello, we use Planner, we use Jira, we use Asana, we use all sorts of online tools to replicate what we used to do physically. Just the way we have our meetings where everybody sits in a room. Now the room that we all sit is remote. There are people on this call that are not in the UK. There are people on this call, I don't know, from Africa, from other parts of the world. And we are all here talking and working together and discussing in this session just because of the enablement of technology. But it still doesn't take away the fact that the principles are still the principles. And we need to still abide by those principles if we want to achieve success as we expect to. So the user story card now will be your equivalent of a task or a card on your Trello board. It will be an equivalent of a task or a card on your planner board. But there are three C's, that three components, three things that make up a user story is the card, the conversation, and the confirmation, right? Understand the principles, guys, please. This is super important. The card, meaning the ticket itself or the item on the board itself. The conversation, meaning the understanding between what exactly does that card represent, right? What exactly is that card supposed to be doing? Who is that card assigned to? Do they know what they need to do? Are they clear what is expected of them? And the confirmation, i.e., yes, they are clear what is expected of them, and therefore the card can be moved into maybe in progress or in design or in testing, whatever the state of the card should be at each point in time. Without any of these three C's, there's a problem, because then you have cards that sit on the board for ages, and Scrum Masters, where are Scrum? I hope there are Scrum Masters on this call. If you're a Scrum Master or a product owner, if there's a card on your board that is sitting down there for longer than it should be, or maybe there's a card that you carry from sprint to sprint to sprint, you should be asking yourself or your team questions. Questions like, is there a missing C for this card? Is it like we have just a card, but there's no conversation? Or we have just a card, there's no confirmation? Every card on your board should have clarity around what that card is supposed to be doing and who's supposed to be working on it. If you can see from my screen, I have here things like the components or the elements of a card. This is this is the front of the card. Of course, on your digital boards now, on your Trello and your planner and your Jira and everything, there's nothing like front and back of the card. Yeah, so just get the gist of it. This is the front of the card, old school way. You have the project name, the story, the number of the card, maybe ID, a short description there. You can put some priority code there to say high, medium, low of a requirement, if that's something you do in your team, or you can put urgent, not urgent, whatever the nomenclature or your naming culture for your tasks or your stories are. Then you have the user story, which is the story description there, the business value, which is exactly what the business is going to get from this. And then the other things that I've seen a lot of teams do or not do is actually the estimation of the story, the size of a story. Now, I don't expect too much stress or effort or drama around estimation, but I think as a matter of principle, it is important to be done because it gives you an idea that there is indeed an understanding of that particular card, meaning we have an idea of how long it is going to take, of how much effort is required, rather, in order to get this card delivered, right? So you want to make sure that when you are taking your cards into your sprint backlog, have a conversation. Keep it as simple as, let's say, t-shirt size, medium, small, large, extra large, simple, and put an arbitrary or a guesstimate size on each of those t-shirt sizes. And you can say maybe small is 1 day, medium is 3 days, large is 5 days, working days. Extra large is maybe 2 weeks. So if anything is extra large, you could still break it down further. But if you are very advanced in your ways of working in Agile, then you can do things like planning poker, where you can estimate using things like Fibonacci and all that type of stuff. But again, bottom line is to have that as a principle, not much about the way that you do it. There's no right or wrong, but having a size for each activity on your board is a good thing. It's a good thing. And of course, you can see the person is assigned to where the requirement has come from. Now, let's look at the back of the card. Now, this is another very important aspect of a requirement. And sorry, and let me check that I am on time. I have to keep myself very honest with time. I want to leave some time for conversations. Even if I don't get to finish the slide, I'm not so keen on that. I want to see if we can do some practice together. So let's see. Okay, so I'm still good with time. But guys, please, if you have questions or if I've said anything you're not sure about or you want me to clarify a bit more, please put it in the comments, in the chat area, okay? All right, let's go. So, as I was saying, at the back of the card, now in your digital card, of course, it's a continuation of the same card. You have what we call the acceptance criteria. Now, these are used basically to check that the requirement represented by the user story has been completed in a satisfactory manner. Okay, at a very high level, you can have things like test criteria to confirm that the functionality is working. These acceptance criteria, are not intended to be full test scripts. So you can have a test script elsewhere, but they will be used to expand into appropriate test scenarios. So you can have things like BDD, as you can see, I have behavior-driven development template there, syntax there, given, when, then for every story. You can even just write them in very simple bullet points. But it's important to have a basis to check that after this story has been implemented, can we actually say it's done? How do we check to say it's done? Now, as a business analyst, you should be able to do this straight out of the box. It's very straightforward. It's very easy to achieve. As a product person, you should be able to do this to support your team and work together with your team to be able to pull this off. It is not difficult at all. Okay, it's not difficult. Okay, let me browse through this and then I think we can get into some sort of demo. Well-constructed user stories, well-constructed requirement. This is just like a litmus test framework, very popular, to check that if we have captured the requirement, how do we check that the requirement is good or is reliable? There is this concept called invest principle. It's a principle that basically describes, is a mnemonic really, that describes the 6 components or 6 criteria you can use to check that your user story or your requirement is good to go. It does not mean that if any of this is not satisfied, the user story is terrible. No, but just as a matter of principle, as a guiding rule, is a good way to just test that you are on track. As a Scrum Master, as a product person, you should be doing this. It doesn't matter whether you understand what the story is or not. you can actually just, if that's a good place to be when you are not technical, to actually check that a story is independent, a story is negotiable, is valuable, is estimable, is small enough to fit into the sprint. It's not one story that then will stay there for 6 months because it's just that complicated. If you have stories in your backlog that have stayed for more than one sprint, you should be asking questions to your team members. What's going on here? And it should become a center of conversation at every stand-up. Don't brush over it. Don't brush it under the carpet. Don't. Open it up. Try to break it down. If the stand-up is not enough, set up a workshop to address it. Don't just leave it to say, oh, now, since we don't understand, nobody understands it, or nobody's willing to. No. That is the more reason why you should open up the conversation to drill into why that card is still sitting down there, whether it should be there or not. Challenge it and push. That is what is expected. So this is a good way to test and check that user stories are good. This was actually is attributed to Bill Wick. He's the guy that created this mnemonic. And like I said, it's basically saying your story should be independent as possible from other stories. You should be able to move them around with minimal impact. Negotiable means that they are not a contract. So you can actually say, okay, this is what we wanted to do. Let's change it here, or let's move it back, or whatever. They are placeholders for features. So they are not like sacrosanct, if you see what I mean. Like, they are negotiable. You can change. Even if that's what you agreed yesterday, you can come back this morning and say, no, we're not doing that anymore. This is what we're doing now. And there should be, of course, a reason for it. Valuable, meaning it should be, like I said before, you should be able to connect the dots between your story or whatever you're working on and the business value. Estimate, I've already talked a lot about that. Put a size to your story. It does help. It shows a lot of professionalism and confidence that you know what you're doing. Integrity as well. User stories should be also small enough. I've seen developers who like to hide incompetence behind complexity, right? I've seen business analysts that hide their own incompetence behind complexity. And what I mean by that is, I'm not saying that in a rude way or anything. I'm just trying to call out something that is very common, very, very common. And it's just us as human beings, it's our nature. When something is uncomfortable, we don't want to talk about it. When something is not too clear to us, we want to push it to one side and just come back to it later. Everybody does that. But the point here is that when something sounds too complicated or too complex to understand, that should awake your curiosity. That should make you more curious. Do you see what I mean? That's how to learn. That's how to get better. The fact that a technical and a solution architect or a developer or a designer is telling you, oh, we have to to blow some big grammar or blow some technical jargons to confuse everybody in the team. Just because they don't understand it, they don't want to, admit that something is not right here. That's the more reason every team member should say, okay, can we open this up further? Can we actually just have a session on this? And let's actually see what we are dealing with here. Is it this complex, really? Is it this hard, really? Is this big, really? Can we break it down? Can we swarm around it and do it together instead of leaving it to just this person? Those are the kind of questions you should be asking as a team. Of course, we talked about testable. You need to word your stories clearly so that it's easier to understand when you want to verify that it's done and it can be tested, okay? So a well-written user story should be clear, concise, complete. You want to check that, when you pick it up, you can verify that it's done without complications and complexities. All right. Let's get into some practice, shall we? I still have there's a lot of my slides. I don't want to. Okay, so this is hierarchy. This is more like, I've talked about this already, where you can have high-level user stories and you can further break them down. This is a story map. You can see there in this story map, we have epics. Epics are user stories as well. However, they are like umbrella stories. Okay, we'll do one now together, and we'll probably let's use one together. Let's do one together and give it a shot. Or if I have some examples I can show you, I'll probably see if I can bring them up. But essentially, you see where we have said epics. That you can see, epic is a high level there. Everything is written in the same format. The only difference is that some of them are big, so they need to be further decomposed or broken down into smaller stories, and even further broken down into smaller stories. Okay, so that is what you do with a story map. It's a visual representation, it's a way to visualize your product actually with high level epics, and you can see what each of the epics carry under them. I think this is an activity that I would encourage product owners and BAs to, do it for your project. Get into it, roll up your sleeves, and just try it for your project. You have nothing to lose. You have a lot more to gain, and it gives you a fuller and better understanding of the project. Whether it exists yet or not, it doesn't matter. Just do it for your own understanding. I'll give you an example from my own experiences. I've done projects where you get to the team and you're asking questions about, oh, does this exist? Or do you have this? Or do you have that? And they tell you, no, that doesn't exist. We don't have that, but this is what we have. It's not enough to then sit back and say, okay, this is what they have. I will live with it, or I'll just take it as, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, that's it, really. No. My approach, which I would recommend, is to then ask, okay, can I do this then? Yeah, can I try it? Okay. And you know what is good about that is, number one, apart from the fact that you will be adding value to the team almost immediately, it will give you a very thorough understanding of the project to a point where you can actually become the subject matter expert when it comes to that project or that product. I tell you, it's happened to me multiple times where you get to a project, nobody really is fully grasping what the project or the product is about. There's not enough documentation in place to really give you clarity, apart from design screens and maybe some wireframes and some stuff. Nothing is really documented anywhere. Documentation, not many people love to do it. This is why I'm running this session, because I really want everyone to take documentation very seriously. It is super important, right? Excuse me, just have a sip of water. Okay, so what I'll do is to ask a question. Can I do it? And guess what? No, not one time somebody told me, no, don't do it. Right? Not once. Like in my 2 decades, yeah, of building products or working in, not once had anybody told me, if I tell them, you don't have this or you don't have that, can I just do it for you or can I take it on? Nobody has ever said, no, don't do it. Except it is something that maybe is not important, or it has no value, or it has no bearing to the project, or somebody has already done it somewhere. Then they can say, oh, this person has it. Go on. But if it doesn't exist and they know that it's valuable, and you say, can I take it on? Can I do it? Yeah. Don't worry, even if you have other responsibilities, I'll do it. Not once has anybody said to me, no, Victor, don't do it, or don't bother, or we don't need it. No. And guess what's happened afterwards? Most often, what happened is, by the time you take it on, you struggle. Yes, you try and read up, research, come up with different ways to present it, you articulate your thoughts. By the time you get through it and you have your first draft, it might be rubbish. It might not be so great, but that you invested the effort and the time to do that. What happens is you will now understand the project more than the people that have been there longer before you. Because you have been able to pieces everything together, and you can zoom out, and you can zoom into the detail. In fact, if you go on my LinkedIn profile, I remember, and this is why it's good to have receipts. You have receipts when you are claiming you did something, you should be able to back it up with evidence, right? As I'm talking, I just remembered one of the a director at Sky Broadcasting. I was a product lead for one of, I don't know if you guys know Sky Q. If you check my LinkedIn, yeah, when he wrote a recommendation for me on my LinkedIn, he said, this guy has, I can't remember the exact word, but the way I understood what he wrote was that Victor is able to zoom out and engage with senior stakeholders at a very high level about every aspect of the product. And Victor can zoom into every detail to talk to every developer or designer working on the implementation of every aspect of the product. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys. Yeah. How did I do that? That's because I took the time to understand the product and try to present it and articulate it in a way that anybody can understand. And that made me to learn about the product and grasp it. Okay. Let's do some okay, good. So let's do some exercise together, okay? But I'm going to, let me stop sharing my screen. I'll bring my screen back up. Whilst I am trying to find a good example for us to use, I will open up the ground for questions. If you have questions, this is a good time for you to just request to speak. I can unmute, I can approve for you to speak. Share your experience or share your questions, whatever you're worried about. This is the purpose of this session. Let's talk about it. I'll bring up an example that we can, or if I can find one that we've done before that I can use. So guys, over to you, please. Questions and answers, conversation now. I finished presentation. I'm not really a fan of PowerPoints. I like to talk about real stuff. Let's just do the real stuff. But hey, the PowerPoint is necessary sometimes. So that's why we have these sessions. All right, go. Oh, I can see somebody has their hand up. Bethany, go for it, please. You have the mic. Unmute yourself and speak. Or you can type in the chat. We can't hear you, Bethany. Guys, does anybody have questions? Let me find. Okay, so I can see an example here actually of something that I've done in the past. Okay, this is a very good example of what's it called? The ATM scenarios. Let's use this one. So I won't have to write too much on the screen. That's good. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again. Does anybody have questions?
Okay. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I have a question. By the way, thank you, sir. Nice presentation. I've learned so many things today. There is this question that is bothering my mind, and I never thought I could bring it up, but because of what you've said so far, it made me, want to speak out to tell about what is bothering me. So, as a new intern or as a newly, as a new developer in the team, so I found out that as I came in, the application was not really, functioning the way I thought it's supposed to. Maybe the endpoints were not all working. So I was like, the task I was assigned to, what will I do about it? Because these endpoints are needed for me to be able to accomplish these tasks assigned to me. So I was like trying to test this endpoint by myself, but I realized along the path that it's taking much of my time. And according to the task assigned to me, there's a deadline attached to it. Actually, I requested for a 4 days deadline when I've not known what is going on in the application, that the endpoint that is supposed to, be a background, something that I should build on top they are not all, working. Some needed to, to be fixed. One or two issues needed to be fixed. So I started, trying to navigate my ways out without, coming up to tell people about what is going on that much. I only said, okay, I'm trying to fix some certain endpoints. but there's kind of much kind of work, at least to my own level of understanding, to do to get these other endpoints working. So I actually had kept to myself, but because of this conversation, I decided to bring it up to better understand what how I can just bring up the issue and make whether the lead delivery lead or the product owner to be aware about of it,
Mm-hmm.
maybe to give you an extension of the deadline
Mm-hmm.
of the task assigned to me. So
Mm-hmm.
that was what gets what bothers me a lot. I wanted to get clarification on how I can go about it and what I should have done in
Yeah.
that case or scenario.
Fantastic,
So
fantastic
please,
question. Fantastic question. I can see another question in the chat. What's the regulatory feature on Epic? Okay, we'll come to that. So, Bethany, that is a very, very good scenario that you've actually brought up. I don't know when you joined, I think you were struggling to join the session at the start. There was a place where I talked about the principles that you should use as a team to test the validity or the correctness of your user story. One of them is negotiability. Yeah, let me see if I can bring up my screen again. One of them is negotiability, meaning that your user story or the task that you get assigned, it is not a contract, right? It's not a contract. That's the first thing I will say to that. So you should have it at the back of your mind that change is okay. If you come to stand up or you do during sprint planning, you agreed to a user story that this is a particular story, and based on my understanding of this implementation, I will be able to finish this job or execute this in the code base within 3 days. And they put 3 days on the card. Okay. Now that 3 days, let me share. Can you see my screen again? I'm trying to bring it up so that I don't know whether you missed that part. Let me see if I.
yes, I can only see your picture here.
No. My picture is not the answer. 1 second.
All right.
Let me try and bring my. Can you see my screen now? Is my screen visible?
Yes, it's coming up.
Okay.
Yes, I can see it now.
All right, fantastic. Can you see the second part where I describe that the well-constructed user story, it is not a contract. It is a placeholder for the features that you as a team member will discuss and clarify and develop. If you get to the point of development and you realize that, oh, I have made a mistake here by assuming that something is already in place, meaning there's a dependency for me to be able to implement this particular thing, then please, by all means, bring it to your stand-up or bring it to your attention of your product manager or your scrum master to say, excuse me, when I said this would take us 2 days, I thought or I assumed, that the fundamentals or the dependency is already in place. But now that I've tried to do it, I now realize that actually what I thought was in place is no longer in place. Can we have a conversation about what we should do about this? It's either of two things. Can we replace my story that I've already committed to for 3 days? Can we replace it with another story? And the story should be to fix its dependency first, then we can pick up this other one. That will save you a lot of stress because what you have committed to now, you need to renegotiate it. Does that make sense? You need to renegotiate with your team and say, guys, I'm sorry, we have already said this is what we're going to do. But now that we know better, because we're going to know new things every day, that's the whole idea. Now that we know better, can we revisit the drawing board again? Let's move this card to fix the dependency first. And then as soon as we fix that dependency, we will now go and then work on the ideal one, the one that I originally agreed to. So that way, even though we know that we had said 3 days before, it's going to take us now 5 days or 7 days, but it's okay, because that way you are transparent, you are open with your team. Your team are not expecting something that is not realistic from you, and you are able to do quality work because you are doing the work in the right mindset and the right time frame that is required to do the work. So I think it's more about communication than anything else. And I was saying to, I don't know who I was talking to, in fact, we had a podcast today and we talked about communication. If you missed the podcast, go and listen to the podcast. Those guys shared a lot of insight on the podcast. Check on YouTube or wherever. But communication, honestly, if communication is right in a team, 70 to 80% of the issues are gone. If communication works, if people are open, available, honest, transparent, and whatnot, and make communication clear, over 80% of all the issues that people have in teams is gone. The rest is just about the doing, the execution. But communication is this. So I like that you raised this, because this is what we are talking about. If you remember, we talked about the components of a story. The card itself, which is the story they assigned to you, the card they assigned to you on your board. The conversation, you see, communication, and the confirmation. You can see that what we are talking about is still communication. So well done to you, Bethany. I really like your I applaud your boldness to bring this up, that it bothers you. And I hope that what I said makes sense. But again, keep the conversation going, keep asking these questions, because this is the only way we all get better. This is the only way we get better. So well done to you. Does that help?
Thank you, boss. Yes, a lot. Thank you, boss. It solved my issues. Thank you.
No problem at all. All right. There's a question in the chat. Somebody said, what is the difference between a feature and an epic? Okay, let me show you. There's a slide. I just spent time on it. But remember, I talked about how you look at how you zoom out and you zoom in. Yeah, you have a bigger user story or functionality or feature. Okay, there it is. Can you see my screen? So on this slide, we are talking about in a project how requirements can evolve. So your feature can be a requirement, but under those features, you then have epics. Under the epics, you then have user stories. Does that make sense? So if you look at this one now, in this example on the screen, at first, right, requirements come in as high-level statements. For example, I gave an example at the beginning of this call. I said, as the CEO of Apple, Tim Cook, will have a requirement and say, in our business strategy for Apple, we want to release iOS 19, to all iOS users by December 2024. That becomes a business strategy. Tim Cook says that today, and he is traveling all over the world. He has said it. Some people in his management, portfolio director will take up that thing and begin to translate it to other areas within the organization. So the design department will take their part. The architecture department will start working on it. The communication department will start doing their own. The software department will start doing their own. The device people will start doing their own. The iPad people, the iPhone people, I'm not making sense. Just from one statement of a business strategy, you can see the way it further can decompose into multiple business objectives and business goals. Those multiple business objectives and business goals in design, for example, they have a massive design department, right? Designing all sorts of things for the iOS. So under design, they can say, okay, we look at maybe this app. There's a team for each app, or there's a team for this particular type of design. Those becomes business requirements within design. Devices will have their own business requirement they have received from the directive from Tim Cook, right? Software people, we have their own. Marketing people, we start planning. Event people, we start planning that, okay, how do we announce it to the customers? So you can see how the requirements can further break down. And then what happens is when those business requirements, and that's where you have your themes, your features. So I'll probably say at this level, what you're having is themes, features, right? What are we expecting to see in the new and latest iOS 19? Then those business requirement becomes your further breakdown of those features into epic stories. And then those epic stories, you can break them into multiple user stories. And then those multiple user stories will then have multiple solution requirements in terms of implementation and execution, detailed user stories and acceptance criteria at this level. And then, of course, this is where you have your final solution. That solution could be or would be in our example, Apple in communications. That's their solution. Will eventually be maybe a communication plan, engagement plan, public relations, press media, advertisement, all the things. Yeah. Then in devices, it probably will be making sure that they are looking at all the old devices, the ones they are going to support, the ones they're not going to support, and how they're going to roll it out. In design, it will mean what is the look and feel across devices, across, iOSs, and so on and so forth. So that is how you further decompose things into stories and whatnot, okay? I hope that answers that question. I quickly want to show you an example. I'm conscious of time. Let me see. Oh, there's another question. When does a product owner use story map? There's no matter. It's not a matter of when, right? And it's not only for a product owner to use. A story map is an artifact that anybody can use at any point in time. There's no. In fact, I would recommend that you should have it as part of your toolkit, as a BA, as a product owner, as a Scrum Master, even as a developer. Have it. It will help you a lot, a great deal. It's not a matter of whether it's now or later or as early as possible. Have it and keep it updated. I would say treat it like you treat your product backlog, essentially. Yeah. All right. This example here, let me see if we can walk through it very quickly, guys. If you remember, I mentioned I gave an example. We talked about example of story mapping. For example, with using the scenario of withdrawing cash from the ATM machine. You remember that? If you have been here for the last 60 minutes, at least you remember that. Okay, so let's step through the idea. So everybody uses ATM, so this should be very straightforward. Now, this is our epic. User story one. As a banking customer, when you write it now, you start thinking, as a banking customer, I want to withdraw cash from the bank's ATM machine so that I have cash to spend for the weekend. Does that make sense? Or does anybody have a different, if you are, let's say you are now my developer, you're my product manager, how, is there any other way you will write this story? Anybody, please. I want to hear you. Challenge me. Let's talk. How would you write this story? Do you think this story makes sense? Guys, I want to hear you. Please unmute yourself and speak, or put a comment in the chat. Because don't worry, you're almost finished. I know people are tired. Okay. Let me hear you. So in this particular scenario, we created a story to say, as a banking customer, that's our user persona. I want to, achieve this particular, do this thing, which is to withdraw money, take this particular action, so that I can achieve this particular goal. I want to have money to spend, cash to spend for the weekend. I don't know if this story is still relevant because people don't spend cash anymore these days. Anyway, sorry, ignore that. But anyway, that is the epic. Now, if I want to break this epic down into user stories, this is the model that I would recommend that you follow. Look at this. All right. I will now take a logical thinking model, logical thinking approach. Now, this is not user stories. This is just me now begin to think, how do I break this story? How do I break this epic down into when you are documenting your requirements? Now, this is documentation, guys. And this is how you think about it. What is the process of actually withdrawing money from the ATM? Number one, as a bank customer, I have to locate an ATM machine. That's one story on its own. Number two, step two, I have to insert my bank card into the ATM machine. Step three, the system, which is the ATM displays enter PIN. All right, okay, that makes sense. Then as a customer, I have to enter my account PIN number. Okay, then the system will verify and confirm my customer account identity with my PIN number. Then the system will display service options. Then the customer can select with cash withdrawal option. The service option will be multiple things. So it could be you want to check your balance, you want to change your PIN, you want to withdraw cash. What else can you do from the ATM? I can't think of anything else. Anybody, what else can you do with from the ATM apart from those three things? You want to buy a recharge card, or you want to charge your phone, or you want to pay your bill? I don't know, but yeah, I guess, so those service options will be displayed, right? And then you can say, okay, this particular time, I just want to withdraw cash. Then the system will say, okay, you are withdrawing cash. Do you want a receipt for this transaction or not? Because imagine that let's say there's no paper in the machine. The machine will tell you there's no receipt in this machine now. Do you still like to go ahead or not? Now, I put it in orange because it doesn't sound like a right thing to do. But again, is when something is not somewhere or something is not right that these things happen. If there's enough paper for printing receipts in the machine, then maybe don't bother print. You see, that's another user story there in that bullet point, or multiple user stories in those bullet points there. Then next step, customer confirms yes or no for receipt printing. The system can then display cash withdrawal options. Customer select amount they want to withdraw. System requires customer to collect their card. Customer will remove their card. If customer does not remove their card, the machine will not progress, right? It will say, pa, pa, pa. That's another story. I've missed a step there. I should have a step in between here to say something like, let me see if I can type on this thing. You see, here, where is it? Under this bullet point, customer removes card from machine. I can put another bullet point to say, if customer does not remove card, the ATM should give an alarm beeping or something like that. That's another story. Okay, you can see the way I'm breaking this thing down. Yeah, are you following my logic? This is how to think about it. You put yourself in a scenario and you start writing the steps. Where is it now? System disposes cash from dispenser, system informs customer to collect cash. If they don't collect as well, you can put another one that they say, pam, remind them to collect their money. Customer collect their cash, system generates a receipt. Customer collect the receipt, system say thank you. And that's the end of the journey. If all these things happen, this user story, potentially the epic will be fulfilled. Now, let's now break this story, these steps, let's now break them down into user stories. What we then do, can you see the user story number one? As a banking customer, this is the first step in my logical breakdown here. Now, change it to user story. As a banking customer, I want to verify my identity at the bank ATM machine using my PIN number so that I can carry out a cash withdrawal transaction. Now, imagine if I give this first bullet point to my developers. So where is it? Bullet number 3, right? If I give it to the developers, they will not understand what insert bank into ATM machine and enter PIN. Okay, what do you want me to do with that? Right? But if I give this user story to my developer or my designer to design or to build, now they will get it. They'll be like, okay, the purpose of putting your card and verify is to verify your identity so that you can proceed. Okay, acceptance criteria. Let us write it in Gherkin syntax using behavior-driven development. Given I'm a banking customer, so the first criteria means that if you're not a banking customer, when you insert the card, it will not work because you need to have the PIN. The PIN is the way to verify you. So when I insert my card into the machine should display enter PIN. Given the machine has displayed enter PIN, when I enter my PIN on the ATM keypad, so that when the developer is creating the story, they know how to configure and construct their code to make sure that this is the exact behavior that the machine is having. Or understand? Then the ATM should verify my identity and the system should allow me to proceed with my transaction. That is a user story. And you can imagine I can do this. This is another user story for step number 2, and so on and so forth. Now, my point I'm making here is if you look at the ideal epic that we started with, this is what it looks like. By the time we've done this and we start to create like a story map, I tried to sketch it on PowerPoint. It's not really great. But you get the gist. You can see that there are multiple stories and multiple cards under this epic. All right. So this is about where I will stop today. If anybody is interested, you can take this and go and take it as assignment, but I would recommend go and do it in your project and come back to me on the platform, ask questions or reach out to me, and I will be more than happy to help. All right. Thank you so much. I hope this has been useful, guys. Documentation is super important. So I want to, in fact, in the age of AI, there's a lot of AI tools that can also help you to achieve these things a lot easier now. There will be workshops I'll be facilitating to actually show you how to use things like ChatGPT and so on and so forth to help you, because in the days that when in the olden days we were not, there was no ChatGPT, all these things you have to come up with your Google. Google was quite helpful, but it's even a lot easier now to do these things these days. So thank you very much. I hope you have found the session today very, very useful.